Carousel posts on Instagram are one of the best ways to get engagement for your business. Reels are really great. They usually reach a little bit further to begin with, but carousels are so wonderful for sharing your expertise because people can engage with them for longer. There is more space to share how much you know, holds our audience's attention for even longer. They've outperformed single posts and it also outperforms normal video posts, but they do not quite outperform Reels. But I think when you have a really great strategy for your Instagram that includes Reels and really informative carousels, you have a really great chance of growing your Instagram account, which as a business, we don't want to just grow our Instagram for the sake of growing our Instagram. We want to be able to form connection with our audience, share our expertise, and then sell to them. But having a great engaged following there is really helpful. And I think carousel posts are such a great way to really share your expertise, engage your audience, and take them on a bit of a journey on a story because carousel posts can have, actually they've just increased. I think you can have even up to 20 different slides on them now. Some accounts will have up to 10, some can have up to 20, but either way, you can share a lot of different slides to then take your viewer on a journey. You can meet them at a problem, share with them why that problem is important, educate them, and then give them a call to action. Like let them know, like, how can you help them even more? Like, can they work with you in a particular program? So in this tutorial, I'm going to step you through me as I create a carousel for my own business. We're going to look at some examples on Instagram as well as diving into Canva and creating it from scratch ourselves. So let's dive in. So hi, if we haven't met before, my name is Jacqui and I am a graphic designer who loves teaching business owners how they can strategically use design in their business to create more sales, to grow their business, especially using platforms like Canva, because Canva is a really wonderful free design platform, or you can pay for a pro version, but it's so user-friendly, so useful, and something that pretty much all business owners should know how to use. And so I'm going to teach you today how to create a really great carousel post inside Canva. Now, the key to really great carousel posts isn't this incredible, detailed, intricate, arty kind of design. What it's really about is how you strategically use your information and lay that out. And that's a lot of what design is about. Often people think, oh, design is just about looking pretty, but it's not. Design is about using aesthetics strategically to communicate your value, to communicate your offer, to communicate your brand. And so we're going to do that today. So this first example is from Shannon from the Social Bungalow. I've just got up on my computer. If you go on your phone as well, you can have the more swiping experience. But in essence, you can see we've got the initial carousel slide, and when we scroll across, we've got lots of different slides. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different slides with a kind of a call to action at the end. And so a really great thing with carousels, and what you notice all of these examples that I'm doing will show you, is that first slide is quite large, it's quite punchy, and it really hits the problem that their audiences are facing to then give them the solution. And so this one says, before you burn down and rebuild your business, again, read this. And so to her audience, this is a thing that they're thinking about doing quite regularly, or think problems that they're facing. And so she's meeting them where they're at. She's then educating them from that. So from this point, she's kind of like, I think this second slide is a great place to kind of build your story, build your reasoning, build, I guess, a bit more context around what you're going to share. And then usually you get onto either another page of context or sharing into your actual tips and your resources to how to fix this. Another example here is from Stevie Dillon. So she's got, do you have this fatal flaw in your business model? You'll see that if you've got a business model, you'll be like, oh, what's this fatal flaw that I might not have or I might have? Like, it's really strategic in the language that she's used, and it captures us in. It's a hook. And so think about how you can strategically use your copy as well to draw your audience in. So on this second slide, she's just kind of clarifying a little bit, bringing in a bit more context. And then it's kind of saying why we're wrong, what's kind of happening here, and then giving in some solutions here of like what are you and how can you kind of use this. And so for her, there's like different styles of business owners, and then she's got a main post for that and kind of a bit of an expansion of that main post, expansion, etc. And then at the end, there's that call to action as well. Another example here is from Coraline. So it says, your socials are not a replacement for real life experiences. And so on there, she's got that context builder, and then she's got the actual particular points or her tips or whatever that's going on around there. A bit of a warning in there that helps captures people's attention back in. Something that I think is really strategic with carousel posts is that you can either have them all looking identical, and if your content is really easy to consume, having them all looking quite similar so people just read through it and read it is quite good. But if you feel like people might get lost in your carousel, using your design strategically to think, oh, how can I draw people back in? Can I switch up the layout? Can I switch up the colors? Can I switch something up, even the level of content in it, the amount of content, to help people not get too bored as they're scrolling through things, particularly if it's quite content heavy. So you can see that she's changing up the colors here. She's changing up the layout a little bit, like this one to this one is quite different. And her call to action, rather than like the others of being like a freebie or something else, she's actually just got save this for later. This also promotes engagement on her Instagram, because Instagram loves it when people save your posts. And so if you're prompting people to save it, comment, any of those kind of engagement, strong engagement things, then Instagram is going to notice that people are liking this content and it's going to share it with more people. Another example here, we've got another really great hook, 9 client red flags to watch out for and how to handle them. It's kind of like, watch out for these, and I'm going to give you a solution as well. Again, this Instead of setting context in this first slide, she is going straight in with the content here. Totally a fine way to do it, especially if the content you're sharing is quite obvious, like client red flags. You don't need to expend a huge amount on that if you don't want to. She's got lots of different slides. Pretty much they've all got that similar kind of layout, but she's got that larger heading and she's bolding certain bits and she's got that arrow in here. What you want to do when you're doing this kind of design or any kind of new design you might not have done before or a design you want to improve is find other posts that you know are doing well and then see what they're doing on that design. You can see they've got their tag here, they've got an arrow here, they've got quite a simple design, but something a little bit interesting with this flag going on. And again, there's a bit of a call to action here. And this call to action isn't actually to really engage with her and her business. It's like, actually, here is something you can do. Here is something you can actually say. And this actually helps us as the audience feel really served by the content that she's sharing and more likely to save it because it's a script. I'm like, oh, I want to save this and go back to it. So instead of being told to save it, I'm actually probably just going to naturally save this because I want to come back for this script. And it means that I feel like I want to trust her. And so I can also see there's a small call to action here, find more tips at golivehq.co. And if I'm really, really invested in what she has to share, then I would go there. But that's a harder call to action because I can't click on anything really easily from Instagram, but it's still a great post. And finally, this one here doesn't have a strong slide at the start. It kind of just goes straight into the content, but it's strong content to begin with of myth. Posting reels will grow your account more than carousels. Ironic because it's a carousel. And so that kind of already captures people's attention. All we need to do, like our main point of that first slide is just to capture attention. And so that one just does that. And again, we've got the same content going across and across. I found this one a little tricky to read as I was scrolling along it with my phone because each post looked quite similar. I wasn't sure if I was actually on the next slide. Like I'm like, no, I didn't just read that. That's different content, but it looks the same. So even like with something like this one, I would have recommended whether it's even just changing the color of the text or just tweaking it slightly a little bit more that it feels different enough that I know that as the reader that I've gone to that next page. And this one here doesn't have a really strong call to action. She's just asking people to go in the comments because it's quite a divisive post. If she's making some really big calls around social media, then she's actually got quite a lot of posts in here. So that kind of content can work well too. So let's now open up Canva and create our own. So I have made a start on this already because I've wanted to insert my content before we got into it. But in essence, all I've done is I've gone to create a design in Canva and gone to Instagram portrait post. If you can't see it here, just type in Instagram and select portrait. You can do square and that's totally okay, but portrait posts are really great because they take up more space in someone's Instagram scroll. It also gives you more space to design with. So it's a win-win. So once you've got your design open, you can go in like I've done here and just add in all your text so you know a little bit of what you're talking about. I'll explain the kind of why I've shared the content that I have when we go through this. But in essence, setting that out first can be really helpful so that you can kind of know what you're working with. Like, is there a lot of text on this slide or not much text? Or is this just way too much text? We need to split it up. Like you kind of know these things in advance. The next thing I always do when I'm doing an Instagram post is working out where my Instagram grid is going to chop this design. So as you see, this is quite tall, but my Instagram grid is going to chop this to a square. So I want to make sure that none of my important info is trapped outside of this square. So I'm going to insert a square myself. I'm also going to go quite quickly over a lot of these things. I've got more in-depth tutorials about most of the things I'm going to be doing today. So if something is not making sense to you and you can't work out how I've done it, just comment and I'll try to make sure I send you through the actual tutorial that goes with this. But in essence, I want to show you through more of the overall structure and concept of designing this rather than every single intricate bit so it doesn't become an hour-long tutorial. So I'm going to insert a square. You can also do this by pressing R on your keyboard. And I'm going to hold down Shift and drag this out so it stays a square, and I'm going to center it into the middle of this design. Once that pink line comes up, I know that it's centered. I'm then going to press Shift R on my keyboard to bring up my rulers. I'm going to hover my mouse over the ruler, click and drag so that my ruler pops up on top of the square, and do the same thing, click and drag so it comes up on the bottom of the square. I'm going to delete my square, and I've got these rulers here that are sitting exactly on my design where my Instagram grid was going to chop my design. If you want measurements, if you're more of a measurements kind of gal, you can see this is 135 down and this one's 1215 down. Now it's time to get to designing. So for me, I'm going to use my branding to design this post. Ideally, you'll have your own branding sorted. If you don't, my whole YouTube channel is pretty much dedicated to that. Or if you'd actually like some support to create your brand, you can work with me in the Co-Creation Design Club and we can work together to create your brand. This is not only a great program because you can actually DIY your own graphics and have that autonomy and grow those skills, but you can actually have a designer working with you so that you know that what you're creating is actually good. I can kind of help you with the whole process. I can go back and forth with you. We can create things together live on calls. And so that's a really great program. If you're looking to create your brand, or you're actually already got a brand and you want to design things like this, but you don't want to do it alone, I'm here for you to do that. So just head to the description if you want to have a look at the Co-Creation Design Club. Anyway, let's get back in. So I'm going to design my post. So as I said, I've got my brand sorted. Because of that, I'm going to insert a lot of things that I've already got decided. So for me, I've got my brand colors here, my brand elements. I'm actually going to go down here and use this green little blur thing that I've created in the past. So I'm going to drag this out to the edges of my design. I'm going to grab my text. So how to rebrand your business. This is what I'm going to do as my main text. And this text here is also quite important because that kind of creates a bit of urgency of like, actually, this is why I want to pay attention to Jacqui's post. So for me, my brand font is Poppin. So I'm going to just use that and design my post. Okay, so I've created a bit of a design here. I won't go into all the different nuances of how I've done it, but I wanted to tell you why I've done what I've done. So I've got how to rebrand your business, and I've got that quite large. I've tried to highlight the word rebrand. I could have done that even more if I wanted to. And I've got to make you more sales without losing money. There's this urgency piece in there. I've also added a picture of myself in. I didn't need to do this, but I know that in the place of my grid, I haven't used a picture of myself lately, and I like to do that relatively frequently just to build up my personal brand. And I also know the posts with myself in usually tend to perform better because there's that person that people can recognize in there. So that's why I've done that, but you totally don't need to have a picture of yourself if you don't want to. I'm also going to add in my Instagram handle and a couple of different pieces of text at the top. So you'll notice that I've kept all the important things inside these rulers. So if I turn those off for a moment, you can see that everything still looks good. But when I turn on those rulers, everything important is inside this section, my head and the key text. But you can also have text outside of these sections. So for me, I'm going to add in my handle, white dear GD, make that white. I'm going to keep it quite small, but not so small that you can't read it. That's the goal with this kind of section here. I'm just bring that aligned right over to the edges. And so you could have a lot of text here. You could have like text in each corner if you wanted to, or you could have not much text, or you could even just have an arrow. Like I could put an arrow in this top section. And I like doing a thing like here, how to rebrand your business. Just something to remind people that when they're scrolling, when they're going through the rest of the carousels, this information here, these small little bits are going to stay pretty much the same. And what it means is that if someone's forgetting kind of what they're looking at, they're zoned out for a second, I do that regularly, then they can be like, oh yes, I'm looking at how to rebrand your business. That's right. So that information is sitting there as well for me. So once you've got your main design down, like how I've got all my text and my arrows up here, I'm going to copy and paste that across to future designs so I don't have to start from scratch. I'm going to click on one and then hold down Shift while I select the other areas. Press copy. So I'm just pressing Command C or Control C if you're on PC and pasting that into these other consecutive designs. I'm just going through and pasting on all of these. If I hadn't inserted all of my text, I could have also just duplicated the design and removed the graphics. Either way, you still get to the same result. I'm also going to copy and paste my background. Now, because my background has a texture to it, it's a little bit trickier to have this look like it's kind of cohesive across the designs. Like sometimes if you just have one color, kind of like blends into your whole, like so you swipe, it kind of feels really cohesive. I'm not doing that for this one, but you totally can if you want to. I'm actually going to, if I right click on this, I can press Set Images Background. And if I do that, the image becomes the background. And if I do that again, I copy and paste it. Next time I press Paste onto a new page, it goes into the background instead of me having to arrange things every single time. So just pasting this into the background of each one. I might change up the color of these as I go, but I just like to have this kind of style down first so I can kind of begin to picture it. I'm also going to do a really cheeky hack right now. I'm not going to explain this in depth. I will explain it a little bit just to make sure that my arm, you can see I've got the rest of this image here. I wanted to have that be referenced and have a bit of a peek of that on the next slide so it feels a little bit cohesive. So I'm going to click on me, press copy, click over to the next slide and press paste. Then I'm going to grab my cropping handle here and drag it all the way across. Then I'm going to hit the across arrow on my computer and I'm holding down Shift at the same time so it's a little bit more. Once I can grab this, I'm going to hold down Shift and drag it across so it touches the other edge of the design. Now, because I cropped this to the edge, it's actually going to perfectly come across from here to here. If that doesn't make sense to you and that's too advanced, just forget that bit. I just like to mention that if you are looking for something a little bit more fancy in your designs. So this second slide for me is going to be where I'm expanding on that information. I'm helping people to be like, okay, my branding, yeah, I do want to do that without losing money. So I'm going to expand on that to help people be really invested and continue to swipe across the rest of these slides. Content-wise for this, just to help kind of inspire you for where you can get this content from. For me, I have a podcast, which I also do as YouTube videos, but I also apply that same content for the podcast and the YouTube across to a blog post. And that blog post is most of the content that I'm now repurposing into a carousel. So this is content that I've recorded once, and I'm using that across a lot of different platforms just to save myself effort and be able to get it into as many eyeballs as possible, because not everyone who is on my Instagram follows my podcast. Not everyone on my podcast reads my blog, and vice versa. And so if I have this content everywhere, then it makes a lot of sense. I like to personally split up my information so it's not one ginormous big paragraph unless the paragraph is really, really great. And so I'm having like rebranding a business can sound both thrilling and terrifying. I'm going to bold that. On one hand, you get a do-over. I'm going to put on a next line. On the other hand, it's easy to stumble into rebranding nightmares and cost you time I'm going to have cost, time, money, and even business sanity. I'm going to bold that just so it's like capturing people's attention. I'm going to help you do a rebrand successfully. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this slide and grab my rectangle here. So I could either make this text on black is just a little bit tricky to read. We always want to prioritize readability. So I'm going to make this a light color. So I could either leave it like that, which is totally fine, or I could put a white box behind it. Technically, having dark text on a light background is easier for your eye to read. In fact, I'm going to just show you, I'm going to duplicate this to show you what I mean. Like personally, this looks a kind of bit more fancier, but this is a lot easier to read. And so I want to prioritize readability here. Or what I could do is do a little bit of both. I could have this text here inside my box and this text here as text on a background. So I'm just going to bring this on top, make it even larger, bold it and make that light color. And now there's kind of two sections happening, which again makes it a little bit easier to read. I'm just going to highlight everything, go to position and center just to make sure it's all totally centered. Then I'm going to grab everything and drag it and just make sure it's perfectly centered by that big pink line that comes up there. Now for these consecutive posts, I don't have to worry about my grid lines because these posts are never going to be viewed in my Instagram grid. So I'm actually going to turn off my grid lines by pressing Shift R so that I can just look at this design without having that to be worried about. I'm now going to go to my third slide now, which has my information. So I'm probably going to, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different posts here, and they're all like the 6 kind of steps. And so I want to have these looking quite cohesive in their layout, but also not so cohesive it gets boring. So I'm going to see how we can do that. So first I've got to grab my heading. This has been numbered because I put a number 1 here. I don't want that. I just want it to be just plain text. I'm going to add my 1 back in. And you'll see that it's done this automatically. If I press Control Z or Command Z, then it's going to make that number be a number rather than a numbered point. If that makes any sense, that means it's actually text that I can play with. So this section, if I look at it, how we've got our heading, we've got some body text here, and we've got a list of questions. So maybe I want to think about how I can lay this out in a way that's going to be really easy to read and interesting. So I'm going to actually grab this box again, copy, paste it over here, and I'm going to put this behind my dot points so that this text is a bit easier to read. Put here some questions to ask inside this box as well, because I've got a lot of text up here. I'm going to put not in my box. So I want to kind of have a few different sections happening. Now, if you ever need inspiration at this point, you don't have to start this from scratch like I'm doing. You could literally go to design in here and type in carousel, and a lot of different designs are going to pop up that you don't even have to start from scratch. That's probably what I recommend doing, but I'm doing it from scratch so you can see the thinking behind the decisions I'm making. But there is no need for you to start from scratch. You can see in here, there is so many different versions already. If I click on them, you'll be able to see the different layouts of all of them already. You can even mix and match some of these ideas, but finding one that suits what you're looking for and the amount of text that you have is a helpful way to do it. Like this one here has a bit more text than some of the others, so I might click on this one, insert it into my design, and it's got something there that I can use as a bit of a base. You would then apply your own branding, your own content to those. Make it unique and make it yours, but use it as a bit of a layout inspiration. So for example, for this one here, if I just insert this as a page, I really quite like how it's got that text on top and it's got a strong all caps kind of heading. So I'm going to use that similar idea for myself here. For one, it's not working. I'm going to change this to my brand cursive font. You could use, like if you don't have a brand cursive font, you could change it to whatever you wanted it to be. I'm going to put this next to this, make it a bit funky. Maybe make it my brand purple, make this text my brand white. And like you'll see on the front here, I've used this little circle here. So I'm going to use a similar idea to carry that idea across. So I'm going to use that to circle not, and this design is coming together. Next, I've got a bit of body text here. So it's not a huge amount because my questions are the main hero here, but I do want my text to be standing out somehow. So I'm going to left align it and maybe align it with this text here so it doesn't feel like it's just sitting by itself. This text is quite large, so I want to make sure actually this text is maybe getting a little bit bigger so it stands out the most. We've got that good hierarchy there. I talk about hierarchy all the time in my videos, in my courses, so make sure you follow along for those if you are unsure of what I'm talking about. And you'll see here that this box here is now quite a lot wider than what I've got going on up here, so I'm actually going to make this box narrower to suit. Now, I don't want my text here now to become too small. This is size 17. It's probably still readable on your phone, like this is going to be viewed small on a phone, but I'm actually going to see if I can line this up and make it a bit more narrower so I can make it larger again. And because I don't have to follow the rulers for this, I can actually bring this down and as far as I want to around this design. So I'm just going to actually bring my rulers up again and drag some rulers across here and here. And this is where I want my main content to be in now. I'm pretty proud of that. Like look how well all of these, the knot is lined up with this box here and all of this is lined up. That's exactly what we want it to be. However, I can notice now that the gap here is narrower than the gap on this side. So I'm going to bring this ruler out a little bit so it's close to the same width as we've got here. And then just make all of these a little bit bigger to suit. Beautiful. I'm going to bring this down a little bit so it's closer to that text. Bring this up a little bit so it's a bit closer. I think that's looking really great. So now what I could do is because I don't want to design this totally from scratch again for our next slide, I am just going to duplicate this slide. So I'm going to click on it, press Command D to duplicate, or I can press the 3 dots here to do that. If you don't see this view down the bottom of all your slides, you can just toggle between those views with the scroll view button here versus the thumbnail view. I like the thumbnail view because I can see what's happening a bit more. So next I'm going to change this to my number 2. I'm going to go find my heading that I've already prepared on my next slide. Paste my next text in. Know your biz and future goals. I'm going to type in here business because I've got that weird gap in here, so I might as well fill it up with a word. So I'm going to fill that with business. I'm going to circle the word goals for this one. Now you'll see here if I turn my rulers back on, this has gone quite a bit over. So I could either choose to put this down into 4 lines of text, or I could make it a little bit smaller. I think I'm going to make mine a little bit smaller, but I might change my mind. We'll see what happens. Depends on the amount of content that I have going on here. So again, this is probably going to have a similar layout because it's got a list of questions as well. So I'm going to use a similar kind of layout, but I do want to make sure that it's different enough that it feels like you have changed slides. Because you can see I've got some extra room down here now, and I've also got this text jutting into this box. I'm going to bring all of that down, bring my box a bit smaller. And you can see I've got some room, so I think that's working okay. And I'm just going to turn off the rulers again so I can see the design without the rulers. Bring this up a little bit, maybe bring this down a little bit. And now if I wanted to, I could do something on this page to make it feel a bit more different to this page because right now they're feeling really similar. So whatever matches your branding, you can do that for this. Say if you use emojis or if you use photos. For me, I'm going to go to my brand kit and go over to my graphics here. I could use some of my circles or some of my little doodles. So I'm going to use some of these just to make it a little bit more interesting and differentiate it a little bit from that previous page. Now, because this design goes across over here, I'm going to press copy and paste this over on this side and use that same pack that I used at the start so that this now carries across onto this page, and that will help people again feel like it's a new page. Right, that page I can now delete because I've done number 2. Number 3, again, I've got some questions, so I can do a similar layout again, but I don't want to do it identical, so I'll have to have a think about what I want to do. I'm going to duplicate this page, delete my random elements, change this to number 3, grab my new question, grab my new text here, talk to your audience. I'm going to highlight talk because I feel like that's really important. People forget you need to actually talk to your audience. Instead of just guessing what your audience likes, ask them, and not your neighbor, your best friend, or your mum, unless they are your target audience. I might even do like a little warning symbol here. So if I go warning, warning, see what funny things pop up here. Just kind of, again, make it a little bit more interesting. This one here is kind of a little bit towards my branding, so I'm going to use this and grab this text and separate it out. I can make it a bit narrower here, maybe a bit smaller, maybe bold it so it feels a little bit different, and I can put this little guy next to this so it creates that bit of a different style. Here are some questions to ask your target audience. So as I'm pasting this in, it goes over 2 lines. So because I'm the person designing this and I'm the person that wrote it, I can say to myself, is there a way I can shorten this to make it easier to design? So I could delete here are and just do some questions to ask your target audience. It's still too long. I'm just going to cut out some and just go questions to ask your target audience. And now that fits in my box. I'm going to make it a smidgen smaller just so it's got some margin around the edges. And then copy my questions. So I can can you see how there's only like one word down here on at the bottom of the dot points? This is not a great design. We want to make sure there's not just one word or one letter left at the bottom of things. So I'm trying to make sure that I can either make it narrower so there's more words or make it a bit smaller so that all the words are on one line. I think I'm going to try that. Right, size 18, that's not too small, so I'm going to stick with that for now. Make this a bit smaller so it captures that text. I'm going to bring all of this down a little bit. Right, so because I've added in this design and the box size has changed drastically, this is still feeling a lot different. Right, next I'm going to go talk to your audience. This design is a little bit different because I've got 2 boxes, so I'm actually going to just copy the heading by itself and paste that in. I'm going to pop this on vibe for something a bit different. The extra text here, it's kind of just building my point before I get to, I guess, the questions and the meat of what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to paste in my text and then use this. Visuals provoke emotion. They communicate what you're about at a glance. I'm going to put they communicate what you're about in a glance on the next line. Oh, no, see, if I bring this across, see how they is just stuck by itself, so I might as well just have it on the next line and make a bit of a feature out of this. So what I'm going to do is grab my box here. Maybe even a style that I use in my own branding as well is little boxes kind of like this. So I'm going to use that as a bit of a style point. Duplicate this to make 2 of them so I can have my visuals provoke emotion on one text box. Now, remembering, like I know this looks like a bit of a process, but once you've designed this once, you can then use this as your own template to create for any of these carousels you're doing in the future. Like you can use the same inside over and over again, and you can just update the front cover to look a little bit different and update the text, obviously. But once you've got these skills and when you can create these things, it becomes so much easier and so much quicker. And you may not be as quick as me, but that's where I'd love to help you. If you do want that support to create these really robust designs for your own business, then do join the Co-Creation Design Club, because I feel like it will be a really supportive program for you. So I'm going to do visuals provoke emotion, maybe have that, maybe a little bit like this on here. But now that I've got that, my circle here is becoming too much. I'm actually just going to delete that for this one. Visuals provoke emotion. They communicate what you're about at a glance. Make a bold glance. And then I've got 2 sections here. I want people to think about their brand vibe and their brand positioning. So this layout's going to be a little bit different. Oops, I've forgotten this text here. So get clear on your business vibe and positioning. So I'm kind of just setting up some context of what I want to share with them. Now create those. I'm going to create 2 boxes. So I'm going to use this box as my base. Create 2 boxes to help people think about their brand vibe and their brand positioning. I'm going to make this box a bit longer to fit this text in because I've got plenty of room for that. I'm going to leave this box the same length as this one just so they feel really consistent, even though there's less text in that box. But if I can, I might actually even just space out the lines here so it does fill it in a bit more and feels a little bit less cramped. All right, so we've got some great information going on now here. I put my rulers back up. I can see that these boxes here are doing a good job, so I might even just make these a little bit larger. My text here is kind of looking a little bit narrower than all my other boxes. So I'm going to just drag this and make it a smidgen bigger. And this text here, I can either center or I can align it with this text here, or I can make it larger. I'm not sure which I'm going to prefer. I'm going to make this one larger. So for this text here, I might try to shorten it a little bit because I've got some concepts here I want to share. So these are Pinterest terms people can use to search for their designs, but I use this as a slide in one of my designs. So I'm like, let's use that again. Instead of having to change, what am I going to do? I'm going to do 2 boxes. I'm going to do one box that's this color for my body text. And I'll pop that underneath here. And then I'm going to use a second box for the box that's already here. So let's use the same kind of style. Keep the branding the same around the corners. In fact, if you want to, what you can do is I can just hover over this box, press copy style and paste it over this box, and it will change it to be the same. Now all I have to do is change the inside color and all the other formatting is identical. Oh, that's so helpful. Left align the text. Let's see if I can shorten this at all to give us some more room. All right, so I've shortened that a little bit. I want to have a bit of a text explaining what these are Pinterest search terms. So I need to give us a little bit more context. I don't have a ton of room to write a whole extra sentence or 2. I'm going to bring this up a little bit. Once I separate this out to give it some more room, we're running out of space. So I might use a different kind of style to add that in. I've just made a little bit of a text here. It's a bit of a jut out, and I might use a bit of an arrow to kind of point towards that. It's a little bit too close to the edge for my normal liking, but I feel like it kind of works. But if I wanted to, I could always try to make my column, my text box even more narrow. Like so. All right, that's working for us as well. And I'm going to try to think if I actually grab a picture of a mood board, or I could grab the Pinterest icon to give me a little bit more context again to the design. That in just as a bit of a reference. I might even put that Pinterest thing just inside my O here. There we go, a bit cheeky, but it's got that idea there. All right, the final step is obviously to design their brand. So I'm going to just design up this one. I'm not going to give a heap of direction on this because it's quite an intricate process. So hopefully they can have a look at this and then get enough inspiration to then kind of point towards my call to action. So I don't want to give every single piece of information ever, because that's not useful. Doing all this stuff by yourself isn't actually useful for a business owner. So I don't want them to have every single step-by-step of how to do it, because ideally you do need a designer to help you to make this stuff actually work, which is why I'm not telling absolutely everything, but I do want to give them a bit of an overview of what they do need to do, so they feel like they're a little bit equipped, and that they have, I guess, a good base to jump from when they do get some help to do that. Just making my own numbers to go with this, just so it's a little bit nicer. Sometimes I don't like the way that Canva does their numbers, and there's not really any way to edit those at this point, so I like doing it just like this. I go in and grab the lines that I was using over here. That's not 100% perfect, but I'm going to stick with it for now, for the sake of our time together. Let's make sure it's centered there. Now, see, it's centered now, but it's not perfectly aligned with this, which isn't ideal. But I think I'm just going to leave it there for the moment. And then finally is our call to action slide. So this is where you've educated people. Is there a call to action? Is it to save the post? Is it to comment below? Is it to download your freebie, to work with you in a particular program? What do you want them to what steps do you want them to take after they've read the information that you've so kindly shared with them? If you're a personal brand, this could be a good place to add in a picture or a mock-up of something so that they can kind of build, again, more of a connection and trust with you. Add a picture of myself in there. Maybe some of our boxes. Actually, I'm going to use my purple box first. You don't have to be as wordy with your call to action as I am here. Ideally, probably be less wordy, but I can't help myself sometimes. I find it tricky to cut down on words, so I'm just going to leave it as we've got it here. And I've got a call to action here of comment club for details. So I'm going to add in maybe a little bit of a text box or something a bit fancy to make that interesting. All right, and there we go. Biggest thing you need to remember too in this last slide is not forgetting to delete the arrow. There is no more slides on here, so I can safely delete that arrow. I might also delete this just so that there's less happening, so really people can really focus on this message of work with me in the club. That's how you're going to help do a rebrand. So that's the process of creating a carousel. Once you've done, just press your share button, download it as a PNG. You don't need to change any other formats. You can, if you've got a lot of other pages in this design, you can just select the ones that you need. For me, this is all I've got. When I press download, that's going to then save to my computer as a zip file. I'm going to unzip that file and I can post it directly to Instagram from the Meta website on my Facebook. And I can post it straight to Instagram. So now I've got each of these different images that I can then share. I can either send these to my phone and post them from there. I could open up Canva on my phone and post them from there as well. Or I could post it straight using the share button to share on social. Or I could use the Meta scheduling app on your computer. So I hope you found that useful. Let me know your favorite little takeaway from this tutorial, whether it was like, oh, make sure you add the arrows, or make sure that you think about the grid crop, or whatever it is. I would love to know what your biggest takeaway from this episode was. Thank you for watching. Make sure you hit follow and subscribe if you aren't already, and enjoy creating carousels for your brand and your business and watch the results come in.